Alright, ladies and gentlemen, the wait is finally over, and today, my friends, we shall be taking a look at all of the new units coming with the Warden and the Paunch DLC. So firstly, we shall begin with the Greenskins, and who better to begin with than Grom the Paunch. So Grom the Paunch is probably my favorite character in the DLC, and one of the main reasons, if you take a look up here, you'll notice that up on his flagpole, he actually has a little hype goblin. This guy dances around and actually occasionally comes down, and I really want you guys to focus. Here he comes, and he actually pulls up a shank of meat and feeds Grom the Paunch. One of my favorite animations in the entire game. It's pretty great. And Lady Turin also loves the hype goblin quite a bit. I feel like he deserves to be his own character, but look at that. Quite gluttonous indeed, being fed multiple shanks of ham in the matter of 15 to 30 seconds. He really puts those bad boys down. But now, guys, let's get down to business. So as far as what he brings to the table, he is a Chariot Lord. And he's a little bit too cumbersome and obese to actually have a foot option. So the only mount option available to Grom the Paunch is actually his Wolf Chariot, which I think is quite funny for sure. But he's actually really tanky. 100 armor, pretty decent combat stats for a Chariot, 40 melee attack, 30 melee defense, but he's really good for Greenskins because he's tough to snipe. And a lot of Greenskin characters, at least in multiplayer, in campaign, it's not so much of an issue because the AI isn't going to goon your Lord as much. But the fact that, have him in multiplayer as this really tanky character, 100 armor, he regenerates, he's incredibly quick with 84 speed, has good enough mass, being a Chariot to pull through formations, he's very slippery and he's very powerful. So let's go and take a look at what he brings to the table. So firstly, he does have Degradons is here. This actually is really good. So it's an activated ability, and it does give leadership, base weapon damage, and melee attack to nearby units. And again, that's really good. On that stacking on top of the WoW that's going to be coming in is going to be a very, very powerful spike wherever he is on the battlefield. On top of that, he does also have an ability called Language of Du Bois, and this is super useful because it does affect himself. So you can see here, Language of Du Bois does give melee defense, leadership, and immunity to psychology. So Greenskins, for the longest time, and in campaign and in multiplayer, have had issues with terror routes. Their units running and breaking for the hills. So having Language of Du Bois to give immune to psych to nearby units, in conjunction with a little bit of extra melee defense, is really, really powerful. So like I said, he does regenerate, which obviously you guys know what that entails, but now you can actually see the amount of HP they regenerate per second, and this also goes for other regeneration effects and healing effects like Earthblood and Regrowth. It actually shows on the tooltip now, essentially how much you're going to be healing. That being said, he's also weak to fire. He is a regenerating unit, so Grom the Paunch can actually go down really quickly to fire damage. You got to watch out for that when you're playing this bad boy. If you look over here, he has a couple more abilities. We saw Degradons is here, and over here he does have Lucky Banner. And again, this really just goes further to making him an absolute linebacker of a character. It gives him 40% damage resist, and you certainly really feel it. So if he's being focused by missiles or being attacked by an enemy lord, you can pop this, and he's suddenly going to become very, very tanky. So that is his Lucky Banner. Lastly, he does come with the Axe of Grom, probably his least useful item as it pertains to multiplayer, but it's certainly not bad in campaign. It gives him a huge spike in damage output and also sunders the armor of his target. Oh, he's yelling at that poor goblin. That's a little bit sad. I don't know if he was. Maybe the wolf's down there. But nonetheless, this is Grom's last item. He's got a huge charge bonus, 430 weapon strength with a really good bonus for his infantry. And yeah, he's a great Greenskin Lord. I actually think he's going to be really powerful in campaign as well as in multiplayer. Granted, he is on a Chariot, so it does come with some of the downsides of a Chariot being that, he does struggle a little bit in monstrous duels, but he's very quick, he's very maneuverable. You use him to kind of clean up all the infantry and archers on the battlefield, outmaneuver the heavy cav with his mass and some of the other tools he does bring to the table, and really prosper. Grom the Paunch, an absolute beast, and a pretty hilarious character to boot. So we'll see you guys in the next unit. And now, my friends, witness the giant river troll hag, and this is by far one of the coolest units in the DLC as well. And I don't know what's in that pouch up there. It looks like an amalgamation of various things, but quite disgusting indeed. Yeah, there's some fish in there, some human skulls. Lovely indeed. But nonetheless, the giant river troll hag is a caster for the Greenskins, and it is a death caster, which is quite a welcome addition. Greenskins, of course, have had a limited purview as it pertains to magic. They did have death magic through Azag, of course, but if you don't want to bring Azag, you can now bring other lords and bring a giant river troll hag. So, of course, she has access to death magic, but being a troll, she's pretty powerful. And what's cool about her, most trolls have leadership in the 40s, kind of very low base leadership, but her leadership really isn't bad. Now, also notice while we are going through this right here, you can see the Spirit of Gork, which is actually AoE buff coming in from the Rogue Idol, which we'll be talking about later. So her base leadership here would actually be 60. But nonetheless, 60 leadership really isn't bad for a character that's pretty powerful in combat. 25-32, okay in the combat stat department, but more importantly, she does have 360 weapon strength, which is really, really good. So she can certainly drop the base a little bit in conjunction with some of her death magic and really, surprise people with some burst damage. So again, a monster's character, and being a troll, she does regenerate and has aquatic. So if you are fighting in the water, certainly can get some business going there. You can see here she has a little bit of missile resist, only 15%, and she has a couple other fun abilities, the Overwhelming Odor. So this is something I think is going to be a bit of a I guess a preview of what's to come in Game 3. I think we're going to see a lot of mechanics like this with like Nurgle stuff, but nonetheless, all nearby units get -6 melee attack, and that's really, really good. So this is the same thing that the River Trolls have, because obviously she is a River Troll. But nonetheless, lowers melee attack by 6, all nearby units in a 30-meter radius, makes her a pretty good frontline combatant. Again, you've got to be careful with her. She is still a troll. 50 armor, weak to fire, can take a lot of damage from focus fire from Sisters of Avalorn, and units that, of course, have fire damage. But yeah, I really think that the giant river troll hag here is going to be a really common pick, at least in multiplayer, and a super useful character in campaign as well, getting you some early game magic. So she does have Purple Sun, all that sort of good stuff, and a couple items that are quite neat. She does have the Assault of Stone, which is actually the item that the Bretonnian Prophetess has. So if we go ahead and pop this right here, let's drop it, you'll notice that it should come down right here. It's kind of like a rock drop ability. Pretty good for like sniping artillery and things like that. She does also have Swamp Breath, which again is just a breath attack, very similar to Throg. You can see the rocks are coming down now. And Blast as well. So the Blasting Scroll, we've seen this with many casters before. Last but not least, she does have Mither, and this is one of the main reasons why I think the River Troll Hag is going to be just super good. And I'm actually thinking of like builds in which you want to bring the River Troll Hag, but you don't want death magic. I think it's honestly worth it. You strip down all the spells and you bring her just with these items, the Blast Scroll, the Bombardment spell, and also Mither. This is so damn good for the Greenskins. It lowers speed by 72% and charge speed. I mean, that's so powerful. So there you have it, guys. That is the River Troll Hag. She has Slimy Shanks, Regeneration Aquatic. I don't think I missed anything. I'm pretty sure we hit it all on the head there. Siege Attacker as well. So if you are planning to attack some cities early in campaign, having the giant River Troll Hag certainly won't hurt. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to welcome the glorious River Trolls to Total War Warhammer 2. So these guys are certainly a very neat unit, and much like the giant River Troll Hag, they have a very welcome ability here, the Overwhelming Odor. So saturating a couple of these guys into your battle lines is certainly quite nice. Let's say you have a couple goblins in the front line backed up by River Trolls. Suddenly those goblins aren't going to be fighting as hard of a fight. The enemy troops are going to be losing 6 melee attack, and they're also going to be getting clobbered by 80 weapon strength with pretty good AP values. Now these guys aren't quite as durable or hard-hitting as their cousin the Stone Troll, which we'll be taking a look at in just a moment. But nonetheless, still a very nice unit to kind of mix into your ranks to get some debuffs. And if you're able to debuff like legendary lords or really powerful characters in your opponent's army, that can be quite cost effective for sure. Now again, the trolls have the same weaknesses. They have 40 armor, pretty weak against fire damage, of course, and have very, very poor leadership, like I've said many, many times. But here are the River Trolls, a very, very fun unit for sure. Looking forward to mixing it a couple into my campaign and multiplayer armies here and there. But I really think it's going to be probably, just like a 1 or 2 of unit, because I think having a lot of these isn't going to be terribly cost effective if you're overlapping kind of the buffs throughout the course of the battle. So there you have it, guys. The River Trolls coming in hot, quite disgusting indeed, but glorious looking as well. And now, my friends, it is time to pay the troll toll once again. I wasn't sure if I would actually make it through this video without making a troll toll joke, but nonetheless, guys, here we are with the Stone Trolls. So I really like Stone Trolls, and I think as far as the best units the Greenskins have gotten in this DLC, I think that the Stone Trolls and also the Pump Wagons are probably the most cost-effective and just solid units. So Stone Trolls are good because they address many of the weaknesses of traditional Trolls. So they have extra armor. You can see their armor, of course, here is actually 70 compared to the River Trolls. If we click down here, you can see the stats as it pertains to their armor are 40. So Stone Trolls do have 70 armor. They also have really good weapon strength at 120 with great AP value. So very hard hitting. And again, River Trolls we saw have 80 weapon strength. They both have good AP values, but these guys really get in there. And normally trolls don't have staying power, right? They run for the hills, they take a ton of damage from missiles early on. But these guys address some of those weaknesses, not all of them. They still have very poor leadership, which again is the eternal bane of the trolls, but it kind of has to be because otherwise they would just be too strong if they had good leadership. But you can see here they do have 70 armor. They've regenerated, of course, being trolls. They have 120 weapon strength with great AP values, a decent little charge bonus of 34. But more importantly, and this is really the icing on the cake, these bad boys do have 30% missile resist, which is so good. And trolls are oftentimes taken out by, things like huntsmen or free company militia with their pistols or handguns, just all sorts of missile units. Trolls are just a magnet for missile play because not only do they have bad leadership to shock damage when they're being shot at, but also they route pretty quick to that type of damage, of course. So here in this case, they do have 30% missile resist, but if you're worried about your trolls being spirit leeched or hit with magic, they do also have 25% magic resist as well. So for example, let's say a group of Sisters of Avalorn or another missile unit that does, of course, do magic damage and missile damage is shooting at them. They're going to be getting 25 plus 30. That's 55% damage mitigation, which does help offset the damage coming in from fire damage and different things like that. These Stone Trolls, I think, are going to be a very popular pick in multiplayer, I think, in a couple matchups. And also in campaign, I'm really looking forward to having these guys as one of my main battle line troops with some goblins and things like that. So there you have it, my friends. The mighty Stone Trolls are here to stay, and you have paid the troll toll. And now, my friends, we are here with by far one of the coolest monsters in all of Total War Warhammer 2, and a new unit for the Greenskins, which is going to be the Rogue Idol. So let's go and take a look at this bad boy. So firstly, he's a heavy armor-piercing monster, and he's very heavily designed to actually deal with infantry. 60 melee attack, 600 weapon strength with a pretty good bonus for his infantry of 25. So in terms of like monster duels, he does okay, but where he really shines in my experience, in my testing, is against massive hordes of infantry. So again, heavy armor piercing, anti-infantry, but you also have to remember this guy is, and has a new keyword here, cumbersome. So he is very slow. 31 movement speed, he turns very slow, he attacks very slow, his animations are just so damn slow, and you really do feel it. So the best time to bring the Rogue Idol is against either AI or a player that is going to be using a very aggressive army to kind of push in on you. If you're playing against Elves or different factions like that, the Rogue Idol is going to be very tricky because he's very slow and isn't going to be able to catch those pointy ears terribly effectively. But if you're in campaign, don't worry about it. This guy is going to be dropping the base pretty hard. So like I said, 150 armor, pretty good leadership. He does have the traditional break mechanics. I actually thought when I first saw this guy that he would be something that, for example, would kind of wither or dissipate or have a crumbling mechanic, much like an undead unit or maybe like a demon unit or something like that. But he actually does have basic leadership, so this guy does turn and run. What's also quite nice for him, for the Greenskins, he does have the Spirit of Gork or Mork, depends on your opinion on things. But while he's above 25% HP, your entire army is going to be getting not a super substantial leadership buff, but it's certainly not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Really good melee attack at 60, pretty poor melee defense, but he makes up for that with his huge HP pool of 12,000 and 150 armor. Something else that's also quite neat about this character is that as he does get more and more beat up, so you can see there's a couple thresholds, 75% here, 50% here, and 25% here. He basically gets a damage buff and also loses a little bit of armor, and he has a bombardment that goes. So when he gets below 75%, he kind of shoots a bunch of rocks around him, does some damage, and gets a weapon damage spike and loses some armor, so he goes down to 120. So basically, as he gets more beat up, the rocks that form his heavy armor start to dissipate, but he gets angrier, which is, very Greenskin for sure. So when you get him to his final tier, his weapon strength is like close to 1,000. It's really insane for sure. And he can really punch people in the face quite hard for Gork and Mork. So again, really slow, causes fear and terror, does have a leadership buff, which is quite nice and does crumble over time. But I gotta tell you, this guy has some of the coolest attack animations in the entire game. And even though his attacks are very slow and cumbersome, when he actually gets in there and attacks a blob of infantry, it is huge splash damage. I mean, it hits like an absolute truck and he racks up the kills very quickly. Again, very slow. You want him in the center of your army against more slow moving foes like vampire counts, like beastmen. Again, I would advise against him if you're playing against Wood Elf players, but in campaign, just treat yourself. It's not really going to matter because they will be coming to you regardless. Here is the glorious Rogue Idol. Just such a cool looking unit. And we'll see you guys with the pump wagons next. Now, my friends, we're here with the true winners of this DLC, the Snotling Pump Wagons. And as much of a joke as these guys may look to be, they're actually really damn cost effective and really strong. And I really do pity the dwarves. These things in multiplayer cost 450 gold and they just annihilate dwarves. And they're kind of like a Chariot unit in that, yeah, you can run through things, you can cycle charge, but honestly, they're kind of like the Skaven Screaming Bell as well, in that they're actually pretty good in sustained combat. If you leave these guys in combat, especially in great numbers, they will just mow through their targets. So let's go and take a look. So 50 armor, 59 leadership, really not bad for a goblin unit. They got 60 speed, so they're not track stars, not as fast as like skirmish cav and reavers and things like that, but these boys can certainly move, and they do have enough mass to actually pull through infantry blobs and get where they want to go. We do have a nice little buff called Pump Harder Lads, so you can see the duration is 25 seconds, and it's disabled if they're not charging, but if they are charging, they get charge speed, they get charge bonus, and they get regular speed as well. So again, this gives them the mass to really push through, get where they want to go. They get a really powerful acceleration spike. It puts their movement speed up to like 70 or 80. I can't quite remember the exact number, but yeah, these guys, I'm telling you, Snotling Pump Wagons are going to be huge in multiplayer and in campaign. Obviously, as you get to late game, they may eventually be phased out, but I still do think that Snotling Pump Wagons are really good in the early game campaign. I did a little bit of testing with these bad boys against some of the poor dwarves, and man, it is nasty. Snotling Pump Wagons all day, baby. Enjoy them. And now, my friends, we're here with the next variant of the Snotling Pump Wagon, the Spikey Roller. So these guys are certainly really awesome. They have armor sundering, so mixing them in with like a Night Goblin army or a Fanatic army, a lot of those Goblin troops that don't really have the best AP values, I think is going to be really nice and actually have some really good synergies. So firstly, they do have armor sundering, so they lower the armor of their targets by 30. Pretty good against dwarves in campaign, and that has been a problem for Greenskins in the past. You would be in your campaign with the Grimgore, you'd have to go fight dwarves with like Longbeards and Dwarf Warriors, and you have like Orc Boys and Goblins. But having the addition of the Snotling Pump Wagons in general, but more specifically the Spiky Rollers, is really, really helpful. So armor sundering, great bonus for infantry here. You can see about plus 20, good AP values. And again, these guys, you don't really have to cycle charge them. You can, and it's pretty effective, but if you forget about them and leave them in combat, they still seem to do a lot of damage. So there you have it, guys. That is the next variant of the Snotling Pump Wagon. So let's go ahead and send them off to the Shadow Realm to hang out with their boys here off in the corner. Now we're going to be taking a look here. We can actually start the battle to get rid of that annoying button at the Snotling Pump Wagon Flappa. So these are by far the most memey of the whole bunch. You can see here they do have 70 speed, so they are a little bit faster. The regular Pump Wagons and the Spiky Rollers do have 60, but these guys are actually up at 70. They do also have that same ability, Pump Harder Lads. Very, very basic stuff, and they do also have a charge bonus of 80. When you compare the charge bonus to other ones, we have 50 here, and the Spikey Rollers have 40 as well. So these ones are faster, they have a better charge bonus, and I'm trying to think of a real good niche for them. I suppose if you're playing, quicker factions like Elves, Dark Elves, High Elves, and you're really trying to get into the back line and put more pressure on your opponent, they have a better charge bonus and are more impactful as like a cycle charging piece. And not only that, but they look pretty ridiculous. You can see this goblin up here is literally just like flapping the wings. I have to say, some of this new Greenskin stuff is just so great. So there you have it, guys. Those are all the new basic units here for the Greenskins, and now we're going to take a quick moment and get the RORs ready, and we'll see you in just a second. And now, my friends, we begin with the new Greenskin RORs, and what better way to start than to begin? So this is by far one of the coolest RORs in the entire DLC. So this is a rogue idol, of course, and has all the same properties: high armor, pretty good leadership by Greenskin standards, better combat stats, and of course hits like an absolute truck in melee. But this thing is also a Cygor, so it has 400 range and basically picks up these giant Gork or Mork infused rocks and throws them at your opponent. Very, very neat for sure. It's extremely expensive, costs 2,800 gold in multiplayer, but in campaign, this thing is going to be an absolute monster for sure. So something else that it does have, 10 ammunitions, not the most ammo in the world. However, it has an ability called Rock Bottom. So when you run out of ammo, you can actually replenish that ammunition by clicking this. You'll notice that he does a little bit of damage to himself. I believe it does about 700 or 800 damage, but you get a lot of ammunition back. Currently we're full, but it does give you quite a bit, which is very, very neat there. So that is a Debigin. It's basically a Cygor rogue idol with crazy combat stats. And of course it has the same degrading property here with the Rebel and Ruin. It has the same buff here with the Spirit of Gork. This thing is just awesome, and I can't wait to use it in pretty much all my playthroughs. So there you have it, guys. That is Debigin, and next we'll be back with the Swamp Things. And now, guys, we're here with the Swamp Things. I love the naming on these guys, but these are the ROR River Trolls. Now, I think regular River Trolls aren't bad, but these guys I think might be a pretty good inclusion in a lot of your armies. So let's go ahead and take a look. So they do have poison attacks, which is quite nice. And if you look at regular River Trolls, they do not have poison attacks. But the Swamp Things, apparently having come from the swamp, have accrued some nastiness on their bodies that does apply poison. They have better combat stats to boot. Melee defense, melee attack, pretty standard stuff for RORs, but again, really, really good because they have overwhelming odor, but more importantly, they also cause terror. So having a terror-causing unit that's not terribly expensive in your Greenskin front line is really nice, for sure. You can see the regular River Trolls, if we pan back over to their unit card here, do not cause terror. The Stone Trolls do not cause terror as well. The only troll that the Greenskins do have that cause terror is the Swamp Things. So again, overwhelming odor, you're getting poison, and you're also getting terror. So there you have it, guys. The Swamp Things, a pretty hilarious unit, looking pretty awesome for sure. And we'll see you guys with the last of the RORs, which is by far the memeiest of them all. All right, my friends, so bear with me. The name on this one is a little bit tricky, but Lokibogies Spore Splodus. I think I got it right. I've pretty much messed that one up every single time. And to be completely honest with you guys, I had to do a couple takes to get that right. But here we have the Lokibogies Spore Splodus. And yeah, they're the ROR of the Snotling Pump Wagon, so the baseline's not Pump Wagon, not the Spiky Rollers or the Flappas. Let's go ahead and take a look at what they do. So having better combat stats and just general stats, of course, is the ROR thing, but they have something called the Giant Exploding Spores. So as they ride through the enemy formation when they're in melee, and it actually happens pretty rapid fire here, it does cause moderate damage in a large explosion. So again, it's just kind of an AoE explosion that does happen. It has a 1 minute cooldown between uses, but that actually is pretty quick when you're in a battle. Most battles in Total War Warhammer are like 5 to 10 minutes long. So you're going to get some, pretty good usage out of this, and it actually does some really big damage for sure. So the Giant Exploding Spores, you ride them in, you do some damage, you'll see like a big gaseous cloud kind of rise up near them. And of course, I'll be cutting in some footage so you guys can see that stuff. And yeah, it's pretty cool indeed. So this is the ROR of the Snotling Pump Wagon. The Giant Exploding Spores is pretty much what they bring to the table. Aside from that, not much else. So there you have it, guys. Those are all the new units for the Greenskins coming into this DLC. Now, of course, there are new items and abilities that, some of the old Greenskin characters have that we did go over in our previous video. So if you guys missed that, that is in the Greenskin rework video. And now we're going to go over to High Elves and show you guys all the new stuff for the Acer. See you in just a second. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to take a look at the High Elf side of the DLC. So firstly, we have Eltharion the Grim, the Warden. He's certainly a very cool character, and if you actually look at his face down here in his portrait, he kind of looks like, to me, I don't know if I'm the only one on this, but he kind of looks like an elvish version of Karl Franz. He doesn't really look like an elf, which makes me like him a little bit more. But nonetheless, we do have Eltharion the Grim, and he's pretty cool. He's a hybrid combat character / caster. He has access to high magic, which of course is good. It has healing, it has pretty good AoE in campaign with the Fiery Convocation. It does also have Arcane and Forging for nuking casters. It has a lot of good utility. Tempest as well is also a very powerful spell in multiplayer. Not as much in campaign, but still can be useful under the right circumstances. So again, pretty good combat character here. 54, 44, 450. Not quite as much as like a world beater of like a character like Karl Franz, but his stats certainly aren't bad when he's on his mighty legendary steed here, which the name has actually escaped me, but perhaps I'll edit it onto screen here in a moment. But he's got 90 speed, so pretty fast. Standard for these kind of griffin mounts, Franz, and those different characters and most dragons. Malekith on Seraphon, or his black dragon, is actually 90 speed as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, certainly quite neat. Now, as far as his unique abilities go, or items I should say, he does have the Fang Sword of Eltharion. So this gives him magic damage, 25% AP damage, and 44% ward save. On top of that, he does also have the Helm of Ivres, which I think is actually a pretty cool item. So basically, you guys have seen this with the cohort of Sotek. They have an ability called Refuse to Die. Well, this is an item that does the exact same thing. For example, you have some Sisters of Avalorn, for example, that are about to get hammered by some cav units. You pop it on them, prevent them from dying, and then you can actually heal them up more efficiently using Regrowth or Earthblood or Apotheosis. Whereas, if you lose models in that unit, you're essentially not going to be able to get the value from healing them back, because obviously high magic cannot resurrect models. So the helm is quite cool. I think it has some applications. It also can be used, I suppose, on single entities if it's about to be taken out in campaign. You can save them with this helmet. Pretty neat, for sure. Now, aside from that, like I said, decent combat stats, charge bonus of 80. He's got his sword and his helm here. But he also has a really cool perpetual ability, which I've actually found to be pretty good. It's called the Miststalker's Barrage. So it's a bombardment. It lasts for 4 seconds here and triggers every 30 seconds. So this is not something that you actually need to do yourself. It just happens constantly. And it's pretty much the same as the ROR Snotling Pump Wagon we just saw in the previous display there. Basically, it's a constant bombardment effect. It just kind of pulls down something very similar to like a piercing bolt, but not quite as strong, around him constantly. And it's pretty good. So basically, when he's in combat, he's constantly doing AoE damage every 30 seconds. He can heal himself. He has good magic. He's mobile. I think he's a character that's going to be very good in both campaign as well as multiplayer. So there you have it, guys. Eltharion the Grim, the Warden, the second half of this DLC. So here we have Emmerich, and Emmerich is going to be the free LC content coming with his drop here. Let's go ahead and take a look at what makes him so awesome. So firstly, Emmerich does have a Star Dragon mount. You can see here it does have a unique name as well, which is very long and convoluted, but it sounds quite epic for sure. It actually sounds like Mithrandir or something from Lord of the Rings, but that is a subject for another day. Now, as far as what makes him awesome, he does have the Dragon Horn. So basically, the High Elves have access to their own kind of miniature version of the Waaagh. Your entire army gets melee attack and also causes fear, which is great. Like every High Elf Spearman's going to be causing fear, but where this becomes so good is with Dragon Princes, Silverhelms, and Monsters. You're going to be able to come in with Dragon Princes rocking like close to 70 melee attack, and it does last for 16 seconds. So it's going to be enough to kind of synergize with the charge bonus of those units, and it's really, really powerful. Now, oftentimes, High Elves do play with a lot of ranged units, Sisters of Avalorn, but I think actually if you're able to use Emmerich in multiplayer, for example, it's going to allow you to use some very aggressive builds that are more focused on shock damage from cav units, and yeah, quite excited to see him in action. It does have 3 charges as well, so you're going to be able to get pretty much have it the entire battle off and on once its cooldowns are off. Here he does also have the Star Lance, so the Star Lance does give him charge bonus, gives him charge speed, and also AP damage, and also makes units weaker to fire. So if you use this with the new ROR Archers we'll be taking a look at, it actually has some really powerful stacking for sure. And of course, he does fire damage himself, so it's going to be an additional 22% on top of what he is doing already with the bonuses from, the AP damage. It's really, really cool. Star Lance there, and his other ability is Lord of Dragons. Now this is really powerful. Anything that pretty much can debuff lords, and it can debuff lords and characters. So for example, let's say you have some Swordmasters of Hoeth who are about to go and fight an uphill battle versus some Chosen with great weapons. Well, you use this, and it lasts 30 seconds. That's enough time for your unit to win that fight. So he does have Lord of Dragons. You can use it if he's dueling someone. I think that Emmerich is just it's extremely powerful. Aside from that, he does have Star Dragon Breath attacks. He has a couple mount options. He does also have a horse option, and when he's on his horse option, he does actually get a bonus for slaughter. So it's really, really good. He has fire resist, all that sort of good stuff. But this is Emmerich for the most part, guys. A very, very cool, powerful lord for the High Elves. Someone who I think is going to be a game changer in both campaign as well as multiplayer, riding atop his mighty Star Dragon. So aside from Eltharion and Emmerich, the High Elves also did get a lot of new lord options in the form of the Archmages. So if we take a look here, you can see there's an Archmage of Shadows, Beasts, Metal, High Magic, Death, Life, Light, Fire, Heavens, and that's pretty much the whole Monty. So the High Elves certainly, and that was kind of a thing in lore. I remember talking to Italian Spartacus a while back, and he kind of mentioned how the High Elves have a mastery over magic. So it's kind of cool to see that actually reflected in a bunch of Archmage options. So if you look here, they do have some decent mounts. Here we have an Ilthamar Chariot, we have an Elven Steed, a Great Eagle, and a Moon Dragon. So you can actually put these guys on some heavy fighting dragons, get those sweet breath attacks, and prosper. Now, as far as itemization goes, they do have the Book of Hoeth, as well as Armor of the Stars, and if we look at the other casters, you guys will notice the itemization is the same on all of those characters. Certainly going to be quite a bit of fun to see the High Elf Archmages in action. And that is it for now, guys, and we'll be moving on to the units. Now, my friends, we have the Humble Ranger. So I actually like Rangers quite a bit. High Elves are always in this weird position where if you want cheap infantry, all you have are Spearmen. It's not like Dark Elves where you have Bleak Swords and Dread Spears, so you're kind of like stuck either going with Spearmen or more elite troops, which actually cost a lot more. High Elf Spearmen do cost 500 gold. These guys cost 600 if I'm not mistaken. So it's nice to have that kind of mid-range unit. Also in the early game of campaign, it's nice to have some frontliners that can actually do some decent damage, because oftentimes you rely on archers and Northern Sea Guard in your early campaign, and that's really just kind of pigeonholes you into that style of play. Now that you have the Rangers in both campaign as well as multiplayer, you're going to have some more tactical options. And if we look at them, pretty cool units. Now their armor is very, very low, so they're going to be taking a beating from high DPS units. But they have 30 armor, decent leadership of course, being a high elf unit. 40 speed is quite nice, so they can actually kite out basic infantry. So for example, you're in a frontline engagement, there's a fight you don't like, you can kite up and away from the fight, pull them away, engage on your terms. It's always nice when infantry have this kind of speed. 30 and 36, which is of course contingent on their martial prowess. Still not bad. 28 weapon strength with a decent bonus versus infantry of, I believe, 8. So it is 8, charge bonus of 18. They do also have a 20% physical resist, so kind of like Savage Orcs in a way. You know, they don't have the best defensive stats, but of course low armor, but they make up for that by having, you know, the physical resist on top of that. So these are the Rangers, certainly filling a niche the High Elves have struggled with for quite some time. And I've had some success with these guys in multiplayer. I think they have some applications for sure. So we'll see you guys in the next unit. And now we come to a unit that I was most certainly very surprised by, and these are going to be the Silverin Guard. So these are basically just spearmen on steroids. If we take a look, they have better armor values, better combat stats to boot, but what's really nice about these guys is they actually have charged defense against all. So obviously they can be a little bit more dual purposed in the front line. Standard High Elf spearmen have charge defense against large, so if you have Kroxigors or Minotaurs coming in, they're going to be able to, you know, take that charge relatively well. However, against like hard-hitting, hard-charging infantry like Forsaken and Bestigor herds, they typically take the full brunt of that charge. Silverin Guard, a little bit more expensive in multiplayer, they cost 300 more. In campaign, I'm trying to think about the application of these guys. I guess it's not bad. They're a really good holding piece. They have good armor, they have good melee defense, they have charge defense against all, so no matter what charges them, whether it be a monster or an infantry piece, they will hold, which in campaign is quite nice for allowing your Sisters of Avalorn and your monsters to really do the heavy lifting. But yeah, I think they're kind of a neat unit. I was really surprised though, because I just felt like they were like slightly better spearmen, but having the charge defense against all and also the magic resist, you know, it's not meaningless. There are units, of course, in campaign as well as in battle, which do magic damage. So having that extra little magic resist is nice for, you know, spirit leeches and, you know, different units like sensor bearers who might be doing magic damage. But yeah, that's a Silverin Guard. Basically a high elf spearman with enchanted armor, so 75 armor. Relatively good combat stats, magic resist of 30, and charge defense against all, which I think is quite cool. Looking forward to trying these guys out and seeing how they do on the battlefield. And now we are here with the Lion Chariots of Trace, and these guys are actually quite powerful for sure. If you look at their stat line, 80 armor, 80 leadership, so very, very good in the leadership department. Certainly not going to be breaking easy. These lines are so cool looking. 82 speed, so very, very fast for a chariot. And also, as far as their combat stats go, not bad in sustained combat. And I actually did a little bit of testing with these guys on the side. And yes, most chariots, when you leave them in combat, don't do terribly well, right? They're going to be having awkward attack animations. They don't pack a lot of punch. But I've actually noticed that these Lion Chariots do pretty well in melee combat, even if you leave them. Because again, their melee attack really isn't bad, nor is their melee defense. So they can actually, unlike other chariots, sit and sustain combat. The mighty lions here in the front will do some decent damage with their bites, and it's really not terrible. So 56 weapon strength with a bonus versus infantry of 25 and a charge bonus of 70. Not much else to say. Being a white lion unit, they do also have the missile resist built in, and obviously one of the main ways to counter chariot play is with missiles, right? To just kind of shoot them down before they become threats, or also to block them up with like high mass units. But yeah, I like the lion chariots. I've had some pretty good success with them in some of the multiplayer battles I have done. And yeah, I think they're a good unit. So looking forward to using them in campaign and multiplayer. These are the Lion Chariots. Essentially a chariot that is a little bit better in sustained combat and does also have missile resist and good AP values. And now we have the more basic version, the War Lions of Trace. And these guys are a very interesting unit. I'm not really sure about their applications. Are you going to be using them as like a backline harass unit to kind of dive and get around the flanks? Or do you use them in tandem with your infantry? Kind of how, for example, you use Skinks with Kroxigors. Kroxigors stack onto the infantry, give you better AP values. So maybe it's kind of somewhere in between. They have 82 speed, which is really quick. Now, that's going to be quicker than Empire Knights and most, heavy cav units. Kind of puts them in that tier of like Illyrian Reavers, which gives me the idea of actually using them as kind of an escort for your skirmish cav. If your enemy slips up for a second, you have some hard, fast AP to kind of come in there, or using them with like Rangers in the front line. So let's say you have a front line of Rangers, they lack AP, but you stack these War Lions on top of them who have good damage, can pull in, provide some, hard-hitting punch. And then the downside of the lines being is that they're a little bit squishy. 35 armor, 28 melee defense is basically not as much of an issue because you have supporting infantry nearby to really take the hard hits while these guys do the high DPS. Because 50 weapon strength is really good, 30 melee attack, and they do also have, a bonus versus infantry. So maybe stacking these guys on top of like Silverin Guard, is going to be pretty good. But yeah, using them as like a backline harass unit too in campaign could be pretty cost effective. Obviously, they have 82 speed, they can maneuver, and if they get caught by like enemy heavy cav, they might still lose it because of how squishy they are, but they have enough AP to actually fight back, which I think is quite neat. So these are the war lines, a new unit for the High Elves, and quite proud boys indeed. And now, my friends, we shall be taking a look at the Arcane Phoenix. So this thing kind of looks like a bird I had when I was a kid, but it is the Arcane Phoenix, which is it's interesting. There's already a couple of Phoenix options for the High Elves, so let's go ahead and take a look at what makes this guy different. So firstly, he does have an ability called Ember Storm. So obviously the Flamespire Phoenix does have something where he drops bombardments, and this guy has something that is very, very powerful. I've actually had a lot of success with breaking formations in multiplayer with this. So let's go ahead and show you guys. So you click Ember Storm here, the Phoenix dives up in the sky, dives down, and comes down with something that is very similar to like a Flamestorm. Now, Flamestorm is tricky because it has a long cast time, doesn't always go where you want it, but with the Arcane Phoenix, you pretty much always get the Vortex where you want it, as long as you're aiming efficiently. Very similar to like a Dwarven Gyrocopter or even the other Phoenix, but instead of the bombardment going down, the Arcane Phoenix does jump down and do the dirty. On top of that, he does have Fiery Rebirth, so this is pretty much the same as the Flamespire Phoenix. He has the ability to come back. You can actually see in the tooltip now, it tells you how much he can heal. 2,496 HP. And yeah, he can come back. And also, when he does come back, though, it does quite a bit of damage, apparently. So I did a little bit of testing. The damage didn't seem bad with it. But yeah, he does also have the Attuned with Magic. So this is pretty standard for the Phoenixes, for the High Elves. This mighty, colorful Parakeet here does get 12% ward save there. Causes fear, causes terror, 70% fire resist, 20% physical resist, and also 12% ward save while that is active. So this is certainly quite a tanky bird. 50 armor, not the tankiest in that department, but usually the physical resist and the ward save that will be active for a large portion of the battle makes up for that. Yeah, he's a really good assassin. You can fly in with his high speed of 120, go after the high value targets. And so that's what really makes it a cool piece. It's a good crowd control, like horde control piece. And it's also very good at assassinating characters, getting this jump on things. And yeah, I really actually like the Arcane Phoenix. When I first saw it and played around with it, I was a little bit on the fence. I was like, oh, what is this like janky hybrid? But after I used the Vortex a couple times and was able to just absolutely nuke formations to just break things off, because he goes down, he does a bombardment, and then he also causes terror. So he basically takes them down to like 30% on lightly armored troops, and then just like, terror routes them into the Shadow Realm. It's a really good line breaker unit, and also quite a good assassin. A little bit expensive, but in campaign, I think we're going to be seeing some of these Arcane Phoenixes because they have a lot of utility and can be really, really cheesy in great numbers. So there you have it, guys, the Arcane Phoenix. And now, my friends, we're here with the Regiments of Renown for the High Elves. So the first one here are Rahagiris Pride. These guys are interesting. They actually have a pretty cool roar ability. So if you look down here, they do have the Mighty Roar. And this can actually be pretty good against like Beastmen, against Greenskins perhaps. It lowers speed, which anything that lowers speed in this game in multiplayer is super good. In campaign, I would probably use these guys more as like a frontal assault unit. Like if you're playing against a horde of goblins, you send them in, and a unit that has goblins and trolls, their base leadership is often like 30, 40, 50. It's very low, right? So -8 leadership in conjunction with the fact that they do cause fear is actually a pretty big penalty to the leadership of units they do engage. So again, pretty cool unit. These are the Rahagiris Pride Regiment of Renown War Lions. They do also have, just better stats to boot, 38, 36, 50. Not much tankier aside from the extra melee defense, still have 35 armor and are kind of squishy. But I like these guys because they have a speed debuff, so if somebody comes in and attacks you and is trying to get away, you can debuff their speed while you nip at their heels with the War Lions. Or if you're trying to just go into the front line and do a big blitz and just get some heavy shock damage and, break their lines, you can then use the good old -8 leadership Mighty Roar. So there you have it, guys. War Lines ROR. And now for the last of the Regiments of Renown, we have the Omen of Assyrian. And this is a pretty cool bird. Certainly a very colorful pigeon here. But if we go ahead and take a look, it has the same ability, the Ember Storm, where it basically dives down and does this cool Vortex ability. And for the same reasons we talked about in the Arcane Phoenix, it's really good for line breaking and taking out pockets of infantry and things like that. If you look at it, it pretty much does good damage against. Earlier I mentioned light armor, but I actually did a little bit more testing, and it's actually not bad against armor also. So that is the Ember Storm ability, but it also has something called the Omen of Hope. So if you're playing against a faction where you're expecting a lot of like terror routes and things like that, it can give immune to psych to all nearby allies. Now, in campaign, this is going to be great. In multiplayer, I don't know if it's like super necessary to pay the extra gold for this, simply because the High Elves are, a pretty high leadership faction as is. So the immune to psych isn't going to be as game breaking, but it can be okay. Obviously, if you have some spearmen, you're trying to like have hold or other units like that, it's really not going to be terrible. So that is the Omen of Assyrian. This is a Fiery Rebirth, Attune to Magic, and just better combat stats to boot. So basically, you're paying for the Omen of Hope to get better leadership or better immune to psych for your nearby units, and just better stats. So there you have it, guys. The Omen of Assyrian. So I actually saved these guys for last because they're one of my favorite RORs the High Elves have now. So the Talons of Torcoletta. They're archers with light armor RORs, and man, they have so many good synergies in the High Elf roster. In both campaign and multiplayer, I think they're going to be a must-have staple even in your late game armies, and I'll go ahead and show you why. So firstly, they have pretty good range at 180. You can see the title does say good range, but more importantly, they imbue fire weakness of 22%. They also do fire damage themselves, so they're going to be giving themselves a little damage spike, but what makes this so good, it's very simple, but let's say you have like, 5 or 6 Sisters of Avalorn in campaign, or 1 or 2 in multiplayer. Being able to target something with these guys, imbue a fire weakness, and give your Sisters of Avalorn even more damage on top of what they already do. And you can even use this with Kindle Flame using fire magic. It gets pretty out of control. So again, just a better archer unit that does imbue fire weakness. They also do fire damage, but it synergizes so damn well with the faction because now we have all these birds, right? We have the Arcane Phoenix here who does fire damage. We have the Omen of Assyrian. We have the Flamespire Phoenix. We have dragons, which do fire damage. There's a ton of good Alpha Strike synergies with these guys. And if you're playing against Greenskins, it's going to be especially nasty because they have all those trolls who are already weak to fire. Well, let's make them even weaker to fire. And that concludes the look at all of the new units from the Warden and the Paunch DLC. So let me know in the comment section below, which units do you guys feel are going to be the game changers in both campaign and multiplayer? I'd be very eager to hear your opinions. So again, thank you guys all so much for watching. We'll be seeing you guys with a lot of streams and campaigns coming up soon. And we'll see you guys on the other side. Take care.